Something changed in how your adult child relates to you. You felt it before you could name it, not because you weren't present, not because you didn't try, not because of anything you'd find on a list of bad parenting. There are 6 specific things adult children need that most mothers never give, and most mothers are withholding all 6 without knowing they're doing it. One of them has nothing to do with what you do. It's about something in how you see them. That one changes everything. Most of the conversation about mothers and adult children focuses on the adult child. What they went through, what they need, what they are allowed to ask for. Very little of it talks honestly about what's happening on the mother's side. The confusion, the grief, the feeling of doing everything right and still ending up on the outside of someone's life. This is for the woman who's been asking, what do they need from me? And getting answers that don't actually land. Because the answer isn't one thing, it's 6. And most mothers are unconsciously withholding all of them, not from cruelty. From a way of loving that worked when their children were small and stopped working the moment they became adults. The last one is the hardest to hear, because it's not about what you do, it's about something in how you see them. I'll get to it at the end. The first thing adult children need that most mothers never give is to be believed, not agreed with, not validated in that nodding way where you're clearly waiting for your turn. Believed. Here's the pattern. An adult child tells their mother something difficult, something about their childhood, something about how a moment landed, something about pain they've been carrying. And the mother responds with, "That's not how it happened." Or, "You were too young to remember correctly." Or the gentler version, "I know you feel that way, but I never meant it like that." Every single one of those responses is a refusal to believe. A 2020 study in the Journal of Family Psychology found that adult children who reported feeling chronically disbelieved by parents showed significantly higher rates of emotional distance, not as a punishment, but as a protective response. The body learns sharing here is not safe. That's not distance. That's a nervous system doing exactly what it was built to do. What adult children need isn't their mother to agree that she was terrible. They need her to say, "If that's what you experienced, that matters to me." That's it. That's the whole thing. Most mothers can't do that. Not because they don't love their children, but because being believed means accepting that their child was hurt. And that is a grief they haven't let themselves feel yet. The second thing is to have a separate reality, not a wrong reality, a different one. This is where most mother and adult-child relationships quietly break down. Not in the dramatic moments, in the ordinary ones. Your child becomes a vegetarian. You take it personally. Your child votes differently than you do. You send articles. Your child decides to raise their kids without the traditions you built your identity around. You grieve loudly in front of them every time a mother communicates, through words, through silence, through sighing, through that particular face, that her child's different choice is a rejection of her. She is telling that child, "Your separate self is a problem." Psychologist Murray Bowen spent decades mapping what he called differentiation, the capacity for two people to be close without one needing the other to be the same. He found that the families with the highest rates of adult estrangement weren't the coldest ones. They were the enmeshed ones. The ones where love was so entangled with sameness that difference felt like abandonment. Your adult child's separate life is not commentary on yours. Their different choices are not a verdict on how you raise them. But if every conversation ends with them feeling like their reality needs defending, they will stop having conversations. The third thing adult children need is to not be fixed. This one is particularly painful for mothers who spent years being the solver, the one who saw the problem and handled it, the one who stayed up reading about what to do, who called the school, who made the appointment, who researched the specialist. That instinct, that deep, bone-level drive to fix what's wrong for someone you love, doesn't disappear when your child turns 25. But when you deploy it on an adult, it communicates something you didn't intend. It communicates, "I don't trust you to handle your own life." An adult child tells their mother they're struggling in their marriage. The mother immediately offers solutions, suggests counseling, wonders aloud if the partner is really right for them, sends a link. The child needed to be heard. Instead, they were managed. Research from the University of Michigan on parent and adult-child communication found that unsolicited advice, even accurate, well-meaning advice, was one of the top predictors of adult children limiting what they disclosed to their parents. Not because they were ungrateful, because sharing became a trigger for being handled. The shift that changes everything is a single question. Do you want me to help you think through this, or do you just need me to listen? That question treats them like an adult. And for a lot of adult children, it's the first time a parent ever has. The fourth is harder to name because it doesn't look like a condition from the outside. Adult children need to be welcomed, not welcomed in exchange for something. The conditional welcome is almost always invisible to the mother. She doesn't experience herself as placing conditions. She experiences herself as loving. But the child feels it every time. It shows up like this. They come home and within 24 hours there's a comment about their weight, a question about when they're having children, a disappointment barely concealed that they didn't bring the partner their mother prefers, a reference to money or choices or the path not taken. The welcome was real, but it had a price attached. Sociologist Carl Pillemer, who conducted one of the most extensive studies on family estrangement ever done, over 1,300 adults across 2 decades, found that adult children most often named feeling judged as the primary driver of distance. Not conflict, not a single event, the accumulated sense that coming home meant being evaluated. The thing adult children are looking for, the thing that makes them want to come back, is somewhere that asks nothing of who they are, where they can just be present without performing. For some mothers, creating that space requires them to grieve something, the version of their child they were expecting. And that grief is real, but it is the mother's to carry, not the child's. The fifth thing adult children need is for the change in the relationship to not be treated as a wound. This is developmental. A child who grows into a full adult will naturally move toward their own center. Their partner becomes their primary relationship. Their friends, their choices, their priorities. This is not rejection. This is the correct outcome of good enough parenting. But many mothers experience this shift as abandonment. The calls get shorter, the holidays get shared with other families. The intimacy that existed when the child was young doesn't return in the same form, and instead of grieving that privately and adjusting, the mother communicates her hurt, sometimes directly, sometimes through guilt, sometimes through the particular silence that is louder than words. What that communicates to the adult child is, your growing up is hurting me. And an adult child who has spent years managing their mother's emotional world has 2 choices: stop growing or create distance. Most choose distance. Psychologist Harriet Lerner writes that the relationships most likely to survive the transition from parent and child to adult and adult are ones where the parent is genuinely curious about who their child is becoming, not who they were, not who they were supposed to be. Curious about the actual person in front of them. The relationship is not ending, it is changing form, and the mother who can let it change, who can mourn what it was and remain present to what it's becoming, is the mother whose adult child calls on a Tuesday for no reason. The sixth thing, the one I mentioned at the beginning, the one that isn't about what you do. Adult children need to be seen as a full person, not as an extension of their mother, not as a reflection of her success or failure, not as the child she still pictures when she looks at them. A full, separate human being, with a psychology she didn't create, a history that is partly hers and partly something else entirely, and a future she doesn't get to author. Most mothers love their children profoundly, and many of them have never actually seen them. They see the baby they held, the child who needed them, the person they hoped for, the version of the story where they are central. What they often can't see, what is genuinely hard to see, is that their child developed an interior life that is not visible from the outside. That was shaped by experiences the mother wasn't present for. That contains contradictions and desires and wounds that don't resolve cleanly into the family narrative. Researcher Linda Nielsen spent years studying adult children and their parents. She found that the relationships that lasted, that deepened into genuine friendship in adulthood, were characterized by one thing above all others. The parent had developed genuine curiosity about the child as a person separate from themselves. Not pride, not approval. Curiosity. What do you actually think about? What do you care about that I don't know yet? What's hard for you that you haven't told me? Not because I'm asking as a mother who needs to be reassured, but because I'm asking as someone who finds you interesting. That shift from mother who monitors to adult who is genuinely curious is the shift that adult children can feel. And it's the one they've been waiting for, sometimes without knowing they were waiting. Here's the reframe. If there's distance between you and your adult child, it is almost certainly not because you were unloving. It is because love, in the form you learned to give it, was designed for someone smaller, someone who needed you to be central, someone whose survival depended on your involvement. That person grew up, and the love that saved them when they were 8 is the same love that suffocates them at 32. Not because love is wrong, because the form has to change. To be believed, to have a separate reality, to not be fixed, to be welcomed without conditions, to have the change in the relationship held without grief being used as pressure, to be seen as a full person. None of these require you to have been a bad mother. They require you to become a different kind of presence, one who steps back not from love, but towards something harder and quieter and more honest than love usually asks of us. The mothers who manage that transition, who let their children become fully adult without needing to remain central, are not the ones who loved less. They're the ones who loved well enough to let go of who they needed their child to be. If something in this landed, if it named something you've been carrying without words, leave a comment. Tell me which one of the 6 hit closest. Subscribe, and I'll see you in next.